Are you ready to learn how to build machine learning solutions in the AWS cloud? Hello, Datum Nation. If you're new to this channel, I'm Dr. Kev of Datumbased. I'm a machine learning engineer that has more than 12 years experience building machine learning solutions. I am passionate about teaching you how to build machine learning solutions in the AWS cloud. In this video, I will walk you through setting up an AWS cloud account. We will sign up with an email that will be the root account credentials. We'll then create users and groups and assign permissions to the groups so that you will no longer need to use the root account to log in. We will then secure the account with MFA, multi-factor authentication, and password requirements. Finally, we will create a billing alert, and we'll probably set it somewhere around $20. However, in this class, we're going to use the free tier a ton in AWS, which is where AWS lets you play around with services and they don't charge you. So really, we're targeting 0, but we're going to set up a billing alert for those that get a little bit nervous, so you can shut things down if you absolutely need to, or we forget to shut something down from this class. Let's stop consuming and start creating. Cue the music. To get started with AWS signup, navigate to aws.amazon.com. If you look up in the top right, there should be a button that you can click. The next screen asks you to enter an email, a password, and a name for the account. So this email will be the email that's associated with the account and the account owner, and you're going to want to keep this secure. The name of the account can be pretty much anything, and this allows you, when you log in, to type in a name of something rather than remember like the 12-digit numeric key for the account number. I highly recommend setting this to something that you can easily remember because it makes login so much faster. This email address that we set up for the account is what they call the root account credentials. So we're going to log in once with this email. We're going to set up all the security and create users and groups with this email account and password, and then we're going to hide it away and hopefully never have to use it again. If you're familiar with Linux systems, this is almost like the sudo user. So if you lose this information, it can be very dangerous. Where if you lose information on like a user account, you can just shut that user down, where the root account, that's a lot more difficult. The next page is the contact information page. So this is your name, phone number, mailing address, and then you also have to sign the agreement with AWS Terms of Service down at the bottom. On the next screen, you'll be asked to enter a valid credit card. Now, in this account, we're targeting $0 spend. However, there are some services that the free tier just doesn't cover that we will be playing with in this class, or we might be buying a domain so that when we create that website to host our machine learning solutions, that it actually has a nice domain name to it, and that costs a little bit of money. You can decide whenever we get to that step whether you actually want to do that or not, but we are going to be targeting $0 as closely as possible. The next screen is just an identity confirmation screen. So in the previous screen, you gave a phone number, so this should send you a text message with some digits that you'll enter just to verify that you are who you are. Now keep in mind, these screens are as of February 2020. These screens might be a little different in your walkthrough because they're changing constantly. The next screen, you'll need to select a support plan. So since we're just starting out and just playing around with AWS, the free tier is perfectly fine. The other tiers are if you're running production workloads that if they go down, you could lose a bunch of money, or if you're doing some really neat or expansive things as a company that you want the support for. However, in this class, the free tier is sufficient. So select the free tier plan. It's that easy. You now have an AWS cloud account. So it brings you back to the screen, and what we're going to have you do is click on the button to log in. To log in, you need your email address and account name and password that you used before. After you log in, you should see the management console. This gives you access to all the various AWS services. There's a box in the middle where you can start typing a service name, or you can click up at the top and there's a services drop-down where you can also start typing. The first service we'll be using in setting up users, groups, and permissions is IAM, which is Identity and Access Management. Once you click on the IAM link, it brings you into the main IAM console or dashboard, And you can see that there are some orange triangles with little exclamation points. And these are just 5 steps, I believe, that we want to take to secure the account and also get users set up so that you no longer have to use the root account to log in. So the very first step of this is setting MFA, multi-factor authentication, on the root account. And this is essentially like if you're logging in with your laptop computer, this is so you have to have another device every time you go to log in, which is highly recommended to use maybe a smartphone, something like that. I also recommend using Google Authenticator, which is free in the App Store. So download that before we move on to the next step. So have Google Authenticator ready on your smartphone. Click on the MFA button. It'll bring you in, and there should be a button that you can click to see the QR code. And so you click that button and a QR code is shown. You can take your smartphone in Google Authenticator and actually scan it in. And then in your Google Authenticator, it's going to cycle through numbers for that particular account. And so these should be 6-digit numbers. And the 2 boxes below, you'll enter the first one that appears. You have to wait for it to cycle, which could be like a minute, something like that. And then you enter the second one and click accept. And then your smartphone is registered as the MFA device for this account. So I click on create user. I create a user called K Johnson because it's going to be my user. And at this point, you can attach that user to a group, or you can attach specific permissions directly to that user. Now, as you develop more users in your account or you share your account, it's much easier for audits if you add permissions to groups rather than specific users. So that way, if you create a group, say admin group, developer group, marketing group, each group can have a set permissions and you can add users to them. And so it's much easier to keep track of what permissions different people have because it's associated with the group, not the specific user. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually skip in adding permissions to the user, and we're going to move on to the next step. So what we want to do is create this user, and we want to give them programmatic and console access. So programmatic is going to be through command line, and we'll use this later. This is so you can use the CLI to instantiate different things or ramp up different cloud instances. And the management console is what we're using right now. So whenever we open up the web browser and enter a username and password, that's what the management console access is. Now for the programmatic access, when you click this, it will create a CSV document that you're going to want to download because you only get to see these credentials once. Now, if you mess this up, you can click on the user and delete them and create new ones. Or if someone somehow gets a hold of these, you're going to want to delete them right away. You should also rotate them periodically to keep your account secure. So now that your user is created and you've downloaded these and keep them in a secure place, we can move on to creating a group. So if we go back to the IAM dashboard, the very next step is create group. So click the button. As we go into create the group, you can create the group, call them developers, admin, kind of whatever you want. In my example, I'm creating a group called developers, and I'm going to add my user to that group, K Johnson. Now, at the group level, I want to add specific permissions. So you can see in the video, I add admin permissions. I also add the ability to change IAM password, which is not in the admin settings. The third and final permission that I would add to the group is ability to see billing. And this is so that you don't have to log in with the root account just to see what your spend is or set alerts. This gives that user the ability to go into the billing dashboard and control all that. The last and final step we need to do to secure and lock down our account is set a password policy. So you can go back to the IAM dashboard and look at the fifth and final exclamation point in the triangle, click the button, and it'll take us to the set policy requirements. So in here you can see I check a bunch of things because I want the password to be as complex as possible to keep the account secure. I also don't want to make it so that admin has to reset the account, so I don't check that box. And so what you're going to want to do is decide on how often you're going to want to rotate passwords and what specific needs you want in your password criteria. Once you figure that out, hit accept, and our password is now secure. So you now have a password policy, you have a user for yourself with group permissions. We could log out of this account, and then you could log in with your user credentials. However, let's just go through one last step while we're here so that we're not jumping around. And the final thing we want to do is set up a billing alert. And this is so that if for some reason we use something outside of the free tier of services, that we get notified via email as soon as we exceed a threshold or meet a certain percentage of the threshold, so that we know to go shut down certain services. What you need to do is go up to the top right where it says Account, scroll down to where it says Billing, and that'll bring up the billing dashboard. So I do two things here. First, I want to turn on the cost tool that gives you better breakdowns, so you can see how I do that over in the menu on the left side. And just enable that, and that gives you a better breakdown of how you're using your services and the breakdown of what each one's costing you. This just really helps you in the future. The second thing I'm going to want you to do is, if you go back to the dashboard and scroll down to the bottom, you can see a button that says Create Billing Alerts. It's kind of like a highlighted hyperlink. If you click on that, it brings up the place where you need to enter your billing alert. So in the video, I create something called monthly budget. I want it to be monthly. That's one of the drop downs. You can have it daily or whatever, depending on how much you're really spending. You set in the amount, you set in the percentage of threshold. Once you have enter on the threshold, it allows you to go to the next screen, and you can set up what email you want the alert to go to, and you hit create. Now that the billing alert's set up, if you go back to the dashboard and you click over on the left on budgets, you can actually see the billing alert that you have set up. You can set up any number of these and however you want to. You could set them up for specific services as well. So you're now set up with your AWS account. You have a billing alert. So let's log out of the root credentials, save those off somewhere so that you don't ever have to access them again unless you absolutely need it, and log in with your username. And for that, you'll need your username and the password that was just created for you when we clicked the console access in creating the user. Once you get into the user account, you're going to want to go to IAM and also set up MFA for your specific user as well, so you can better secure the account. You're also going to need to create a new password that meets all the criteria. We're now all set up, and let's move on in the next video to creating a development and to looking at our development environment. Hit subscribe below if you like this content and you want to follow along as I create new videos in this series. The next video will be setting up our development environment for creating the machine learning solutions in the AWS cloud. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.